Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Aquarian. Today, Saturn stations retrograde, and it's moving from 1 degree of Aries back into Pisces for a short amount of time. I should actually look at that really quick on my ephemeris. So it'll return to Pisces in September. It's retrograde right now, but it's going to take a little while for it to get back into Pisces. So it'll be at 1 degree Aries through July, and through August, it'll get to 0 degrees Aries, and then by September, it will be back in Pisces. And it will remain in Pisces until after it stations retrograde and comes back out in February 2026. So yeah, 4 months, something like that. So if you have Saturn in Aries in your birth chart, you're probably around 27 or 28 years old, and you're not quite in your Saturn return just yet because it's moving back into Pisces. But for those of you around the age 31, your Saturn return isn't over yet. You're still in it. So there's that. I've been thinking a lot about this podcast and how I want to show up for all of you. How much do I want to script? How much do I want to speak from my heart spontaneously? How much space am I allowed to make mistakes or take a pause or say something imperfectly? And, today feels like a good day to talk about all that because Saturn is stationing retrograde. And retrograde is all about going back over whatever that planet represents. And Saturn represents reality, limits, structure, boundaries, karma, time, the stuff that doesn't bend just because you want it to. So let's take a second to talk about the real world and how Saturn shows up in your psyche. Because the planets, for us astrologers and anybody who loves astrology, they aren't just rocks in the sky. They represent things. They're ways of seeing. They're patterns of perception. Archetypes that speak through your experience. The sun is your integrity, what you're becoming in this lifetime. The moon is your instinct, what you've been and where you've been. Mercury is how you think and communicate. Venus is what you love and what draws you in. Mars is what you chase. Jupiter is how you grow and how you outgrow things. And Saturn represents where you feel slow, where you feel inadequate or immature, what you feel burdened by. It's when time really gets turned down and every second you're walking through it like molasses. It's the hard-earned part of your life, the life you likely compare to other people's, and that you feel you have nothing to show for. That's why Saturn is so important to talk about, especially in a world where manifestation is interrelated with spirituality, where your goals become more about control and living your life. So say the right affirmation, visualize the right outcome, become the right kind of person so you can have everything that you've ever wanted, that you've ever fantasized about, and that will somehow affirm your existence here. That will help the comparison issue because now you're the one that they're comparing their life to. And that's Saturn's job for us, is to humble us. Because no matter how hard you try to outgrow your shadow, no matter how much you vision board, you can't escape the parts of yourself that feel young and immature or scared or not enough. And Saturn doesn't care about how perfect your morning routine is or how many positive thoughts you've stacked on your mirror. Saturn wants you to grow through time, through effort, reality. And Saturn will wait. It has time. Now listen, don't get me wrong. What you're dreaming of is possible, especially in our modern society that has a new innovation every other day, opportunities all over the place for anybody who is a hustler or has an idea or is interesting or engaging. And, there's tech and tools and knowledge. It's just super easy right now if you have that ability to express yourself, to get some kind of return and to see your life turn into what you want. There's nothing wrong with imagining your life. That's definitely not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it's a problem when we are told that imagined life is the better you. That doesn't make any sense. That is your preference as a human on this planet. I would prefer to live by the beach or in a mountain area. I would prefer to live in a neighborhood with families or nightlife. We have our preferences, and you should know those. You should be able to, at some point, categorize that for yourself so that you can materialize the outside world in a way that best reflects you and supports you. But what I'm emphasizing is that a lot of what is touted to us as spirituality is actually materialism. The things we think we want, often they're still just things. That partner, that home, that lifestyle that feels artistic or peaceful or just right. None of that is bad. We're human. We're material beings. We live in bodies and crave beauty. That's real. But what's also real is this. No matter where you go with you. Meaning, even if you get the body, the money, the partner, the house, if you haven't faced the part of you that feels like it's not enough or not lovable or too far behind, it's gonna follow you. That's what Saturn is. It's the reminder that success or love or beauty doesn't erase your psyche. It just reveals what's still waiting to be seen. Because when you get all those things, all those material, dreamed things that you've wanted for so long, it doesn't change who you are. And that's actually the really hard part about it, because who you are has most likely not been a big part of the problem. A big part of the problem is who you think you are. So what's the best way to determine who you are versus who you think you are? In astrological terms, who you are is your sun, your moon, and your rising sign, your big three. Your sun, like I said, is who you intend to be. I'm a Libra, so I intend to be fair. I'm not always fair, but that's what I intend to be. Those are the people I look up to. That's the integrity that I hope to follow. It's more complicated than that, but I'm just using one blanketed term. My moon is Aries, so who I am is also who I've been. I have been a warrior. I've been someone who has stood up to challenges, someone who likes to be pioneering and grow in more friction and contradiction than ease. And my rising sign is Leo, so I see the world as a performance, and the world sees me as someone who can give a good performance. And beyond that, it's proclivities, it's preferences, it's what I like to do in my off time. You can even look at your midheaven if you want. My midheaven is Taurus, so I am inspired by beauty and food and music. All of these things are who I am. And there's more to it than that, but if you just want like a really easy way to kind of get your head around who you are, look at those three, your big three, sun, moon, rising. Now, who you think you are is your judgment of all of those things. Now, notice how I said judgment and not discernment. Judgment is just arbitrarily judging something as bad or good based off of beliefs that are either subconscious or learned from childhood. Discernment is at least taking a second to look at it and asking if it's bad or good. And maybe taking a look at other facts or figures or experiences, personal experiences, other people's experiences, and then making a decision. So let's use my sun sign as an example. So I'm a Libra. And one of the things that is commonly said about Libras is that we're indecisive. So that would be the judgment. They're indecisive. When you judge that a Libra is indecisive, all you do is back a person into a corner and you just tell them who they are, and they can't determine their life at all beyond being indecisive. But if you were to instead discern or recognize, that's what discern is, to recognize, that indecisiveness is coming from a fear of representing yourself and speaking your mind or having a mind, then you get to ask yourself, what is it that's holding me back from expressing in the smallest way my own desires, my own opinion, my own expectations? And that's where the energy of Saturn steps in and says, yeah, why not? And then everything inside of you starts to get really scared, starts to imagine the reality of what it would be like if you were to have your own opinion, or if you were to defend your own opinion. Because a lot of Libras find themselves in households that don't let them express their opinion or everything goes much better if they don a personality that keeps them safe, which is usually a likable personality. And a likable personality goes with the flow of what everybody thinks. But when we judge that person, we just say that they're flighty or indecisive. And then it keeps them in this karmic depressive loop that labeled them over opening up the idea that maybe they are immature in this area or scared in this area, or believe that if they were to express their opinion, they would not be loved. So for this Saturn retrograde, I think I want to give all of you a bit of a food for thought, and it's going to be for every zodiac sign. And it's where you might feel behind in your becoming, because I'm just going to talk about the sun signs. And this is where maybe you could really focus on the Saturnian path of making yourself whole, and making yourself whole in ways that feel almost impossible because you can't see them. It's extremely hard to see where you are holding yourself back when it's much easier to see the outside world holding you back. And it doesn't mean that if you really accept Saturn and how difficult it is to move past those thoughts and those feelings, that all of the world that you have seen in your mind will now just automatically be created. That's not true. But what will happen is that you will feel so much more content, grateful, and in alignment with where you are right now. And that's even more powerful because no matter if you got everything you wanted, everything comes and goes in some way. Nothing stays the same, right? What is the only constant is change. So knowing that, and knowing that that is a universal law, that is not just something that happens to you or to me or to, individuals. It happens to all of us. So to know that is to be able to work with that. And that's where the true power lies. Before I go into every zodiac sign and what I think you should focus on for this Saturn retrograde, I want to bring up a scientific experiment that happened a little while ago. I think maybe 2022. It wasn't long ago, but it was in this biodome. And the scientists, they were trying to grow things under like perfect conditions, right? Like it was in a dome and they were growing fruits and vegetables and trees. And it was a place where humans could live happily for months at a time. Maybe I think they might have been even trying to do that for like maybe for Mars or something, like trying to figure out how we can have this biodiversity and like perfection, right? But when the trees grew to a certain height, they would topple over. And it would baffle the scientists until they realized they forgot to include the natural element of wind. And what is wind in an archetypal form or in a psychological form? It's resistance, right? Trees need wind to blow against them because it causes their root systems to grow deeper, which supports the tree as it grows taller. It is the same for human beings. That's why we say as above, so below. What we are seeing from you in the material world is what's going on inside of you in the spiritual world. We might see something about you that is extremely strong, and that root system might be very pushed into the ground, and you know who you are there, and you feel good about who you are there. And if somebody questioned you, you'd be able to defend it, and you'd be able to defend it in a way that felt good to you. But there are other areas that are easily toppled over in you because there's no real integrity behind it. You haven't let someone resist you. You haven't let life teach you in a way that you have to question yourself, or you'd have to look to other people to give you feedback, right? That's that wind is saying, do I do this in the best way that I can? Or have I been doing this in a way that I'm actually not as proud of, or in a way that I was completely operating on autopilot and I'm not happy with the results that I'm getting, right? So even that scientific experiment that didn't even realize it was experimenting for strength, saw that trees, a huge part of their system, a huge part of their even ability to communicate with each other is through the wind and through resistance and through being able to withstand things that feel extremely harsh and you can't tell when it's going to end. So now we're going to talk about each zodiac's wind while Saturn retrogrades back into Pisces. Let's start with the signs Taurus and Capricorn. These signs will sextile Saturn in Pisces. And you will experience opportunity through discipline and receptivity. So Taurus specifically, support is available if you are willing to do the slow work. This retrograde offers you a stabilizing current, one that rewards consistency in your spiritual life or your creativity. But where you might feel behind is in trusting others to build something with you. Saturn reminds you discipline isn't just about routine. It's about opening to the messiness of collaboration and not doing it all yourself. Capricorn, you're no stranger to Saturn's pressure. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, so you feel it innately anyways. And this retrograde gives you an opportunity to integrate your ambitions with your inner life. You may feel behind in gentleness, like you're always achieving but never arriving. Saturn wants you to take your inner world just as seriously as your resume. Build softness like you build structure, with intention, patience, and reverence. Now let's talk about the signs that square Pisces, and that's Gemini and Sagittarius. So Gemini first, mental quickness is going to hit a wall. And no matter how much you analyze or reframe, you can't talk your way out of what's surfacing. You may feel behind in maturity, emotionally or spiritually, like you're old enough to know better, but still making decisions that unravel you. Saturn here is sobering. You're being asked to bring your mind and soul into conversation, not competition. And Sagittarius, the freedom you chase is clashing with the limits you pretend not to have. You may feel behind when it comes to roots, home, ancestry, or emotional security. Saturn is asking, what are you building your freedom on? If you're always escaping, this retrograde may feel like a trap. But the invitation is to create a spiritual foundation that can hold you, even when your fire dims. Now let's talk about the trining signs to Pisces. They are Cancer and Scorpio. And this is going to be easier for you guys, because trine is always a more pleasant experience, even though Saturn, no matter what, shows you limits. But the trine energy is a little bit easier. So for Cancer first, there's a grace in this retrograde for you. But grace, like I said, it doesn't mean it's easy. You're being supported to take responsibility for your healing, especially around beliefs, faith, and forgiveness. You may feel behind when it comes to believing in something greater than yourself. But Saturn wants you to understand that belief isn't naive when it's chosen with discernment. It's devotion. And for Scorpio, this retrograde supports your transformation. It's time to take your creative work, your love, and your emotional healing seriously. You may feel behind when it comes to joy, like you've delayed pleasure until everything else is fixed. But Saturn in Pisces reminds you joy isn't frivolous, it's foundational. And it too requires commitment, ritual, and care. And now we're going to move on to the oppositional sign of Virgo. And Virgo, this is a sobering and possibly painful placement for you. Saturn is showing you the difference between control and surrender. You may feel behind in trusting your body, your intuition, your worth when things are unfinished or imperfect. Relationships mirror this back to you. And the lesson, you don't have to save anyone to be worthy of love. And you don't have to be right to be real. Now we're going to move on to the inconjunct signs to Pisces. And these are a little bit more in the peripheral. It's harder for Leo and Libra to see this. Those are the two inconjunct signs. So let's start with Leo. Saturn keeps asking you to let go of the performance and sit with the silence. The inconjunct makes it hard to see what's wrong. You just feel the dissonance. You may feel behind in depth or in intimacy, like everyone else has moved on from needing applause and you're still hungry for the spotlight. Saturn doesn't take the stage. It builds the theater, brick by brick. So maybe it's time to redesign the stage itself. And Libra, you might feel behind in your health, work-life balance, or even your capacity to function without external validation. Pisces fogs the structure you crave, so you may overcompensate with people-pleasing or indecision. This is your time to define boundaries from within, even when no one sees or praises you for it. And now on to semi-sextile, which is also a bit difficult to see, but Aries and Aquarius will be experiencing this when Saturn returns to Pisces. And we'll start with Aries. You're so used to forging forward that the subtle whispers of Pisces feel like radio static. But this retrograde asks you to question your momentum. What are you sprinting toward? And what are you running from? You may feel behind when rest reveals fears you haven't outrun. Fears about surrender, about being soft, about having no clear answer to give when someone asks, but what do you feel? And Aquarius, you might feel behind in embodiment. Like your ideas are sharp, but your spiritual or emotional body hasn't caught up. Saturn retrograde asks you to reground in your values, especially when they seem irrelevant or impractical. Not everything needs to be disruptive to be true. And finally, Pisces. Saturn is back in your sign for the last time for 27 years. So that's something to celebrate. But this is your pilgrimage. You're walking backward into the places where you once vanished, where you didn't know how to protect yourself or name what you needed. You may feel behind in personhood, like you've dissolved too much, merged too much, given yourself away too much, too freely. But this retrograde is your chance to rebuild sacred boundaries, to let reality hold you, not drown you. Thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out with me, and expect to hear a lot more from me. I am still kind of starting with this social media, and I just got a new job, which is amazing, as Jupiter is about to square my sun, which makes a lot of sense. But I am planning to have a lot more available to all of you. I have so much fun doing this. I have so much fun interacting on an astrological level, a tarot level, a mystical level, and I hope that you all get more involved, because the most fun that I have is when I get to talk to you, and I'm sure that'll happen more as time goes on. So thank you so much again, and I will be seeing you in the next episode. I think the next one is Wednesday, and then I think Mercury goes retrograde Thursday, so that I'm going to have an episode up about what the signs will be feeling for Mercury retrograde. And then after that, the Leo new moon. So I will be seeing you then. Have a great rest of your week. Blessed be.